We'd like to open up for a question and answer session. You have any questions or any comments that you'd like to make at this time?
Well, I'll start. You know, I introduced a lot of people in terms of what they've done and how the movement started. You know, this is a rare opportunity. They don't see themselves this way. They're too modest. And it's not a false modesty. That's what's amazing to me. I'd love to hear Carlos or Gabby's thoughts, or Jose's, or others that want to speak to some of these things. Love to learn more about it. Gabby?
Gabby, you want to come here? Or can you hear her? You want to come down here?
So first I want to say thank you. Thank you for being able to recognize the work that we do. I think a lot of people, and definitely for us, we didn't do the walk, or we haven't been doing the work that we do for recognition or because we want to be on history books. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do, because we're affected by the issue. And I think that it's important to know that what we did in the walk, when we talked about it, we were saying that we wanted to rebuild the underground railroad, that we wanted to do nonviolence. And I remember that the months leading up to the walk, it was every Wednesday that we would get together and we would learn. We would learn and look at the civil rights movement, the women's rights movements that have happened throughout the country and throughout the history of the world, and took lessons from that and applied it to our walk. So, you know, we really felt that throughout our walk and through the Trail of Dreams, we had the spirit of all those people that fought hard to have rights. And we felt that it was important for us to commemorate their legacy, but also to build upon what they had done. And I think that as long as there's human beings, as long as there's, you know, an earth, there's going to be issues, there's going to be people that are going to be disfranchised, and I think it's up to us to either just sit by and watch it, or up to us to stand up and continue the fight for human rights, continue the fight for equality, and I think definitely continue in the footsteps of these giants that are no longer with us, but like Professor Roman said, are still with us in spirit.
Thank you so much, Gabby. I'm sure we have other comments or anything.
I've never understood what on earth is to be gained politically by being opposed to the DREAM Act. It's been a great mystery to me in American politics.
Well, I mean, I can't speak for them because it baffles me, other than hate, right? I mean, one of the things is to use the narrative of rule of law, right? Because it's not, and that's one of the powers, right, of the dreamers, that they set forth a different narrative. But as with many of the things that goes on with immigration, and not, you know, and it'll be shameless, but my book that's coming out pretty much any day now, that is called "Those Damn Immigrants: America's Hysteria Over Latin American Migration," speaks to the fact that if I am a politician, and perhaps by definition of questionable character, and I want to speak to, right, I want to speak to and challenge, right, the constituencies to get out. Let me be strong on two things. Let me be strong on crime and national security. What better group to attack than a voiceless, silent group? So we're not going to clump a sympathetic group, right? We're going to put them all together as lawbreakers, right? And they want amnesty. And they're felons. They're violating the law. First and foremost, right? The first time violation of border crossing is a misdemeanor. Most of us have come close, depending on how quickly we are on the turnpike or the Palmetto, in terms of this. So part of that narrative is that natural slippery slope argument associated with dreamers, and where does it end? By accounts I read today, Senator Rubio was getting pushback on dreamers alone, and to what extent it goes beyond that. We'll see, because we've seen this before. The great grassroots efforts of 2006, where immigrants and non-immigrants alike were taking to the streets, was shut down by hate radio. Right? And what did we get? We got some immigration reform. We got 1,000-mile fences, right? Literal fences and electronic ones. So it's part of that, stay your ground. But one of the things that changed, the Dreamers had instrumental role, and a few others. And over time, more and more became aware of it. I can recall a time when I talked the word Dreamer to my fellow immigration scholars. They didn't even know what I was talking about in terms of the power and force and that narrative. Over time, that narrative is changing. And you know what else changed? States like Florida and Ohio, where the Latin Road came out and said, you know what? Immigration, and that's a theme, a drum that needs to be beaten. That undocumented immigration and attacks against the undocumented immigrants are attacks against documented immigrants, are attacks against the Latino community, are attacks against every person that is an outsider because of the color of their skin, the language they speak, or who they love. And people are starting to realize that. And all of a sudden, we're getting Republicans out there saying, I'm enlightened. In terms of the group of 8, no problems with Republicans taking the lead. Now in terms of this issue, if there is a Republican advocate like Marco Rubio that puts forth comprehensive reform that I think really works, I'll be the first one out there to vote for him and that party. Because I will not be dismissed, or hopefully this community will not be dismissed to say we're Democrats no matter what. No, find some real change. So I think it's been inertia, it's been hate, and a lack of accountability. A power that diversity fortunately challenged, a power that this university provides in terms of its leadership and in terms of its future leaders.
President Barack Obama made a speech yesterday on immigration, and if you haven't heard it, go look for it up on YouTube. It was unbelievable. I think the statements that stuck with me most that he made to the crowd was, unless you are a full-blooded Native American, either you are an immigrant or a descendant of immigrant. So why can't you understand and why can't you get it? And I find it very interesting. We are a nation of immigrants. And the reason we are so successful in this country is because the immigrants brought things to this country that we made money off of. We would have had a lot of the inventions we had there not been immigrants. We wouldn't have the music, a lot of things that make America great. We wouldn't have it if we weren't a nation of immigrants. And that was the point he made so beautifully in his speech yesterday. So if you got a chance, see if you can find it on YouTube. It was a great speech.
How much of the...
Could you say who you are?
Oh, my name is Kevin Rutledge. I'm a 2L at the College of Law. I also tend to be very conservative. How much of this pushback against immigration do you think is a legacy of the fact that when Ronald Reagan tried to push immigration reform, they got the mass legalization, and then he got the Democratic Party to turn around the long-term reforms and block those? And how much do you think is related to the fact that when George Bush Jr. tried to push through immigration reform that was blocked by a congressman from New York?
Well, I mean, those points are well taken, and we should appreciate that this is not a Democratic Club Party, assessment, right? Chuck Schumer, that you're referring to, has long been accused of killing comprehensive reform, and unfortunately, he's a leader now in terms of the new reform effort. So, again, there are few that can pick up the stone in this context. But also, in terms of comprehensive reform, the closest that happened was not Ronald Reagan, but George Bush. In actuality, the proposals both by the Gang of Eight and President Obama do not differ much from George W. Bush. He wasn't a moderate, he was progressive on these issues. He realized that maybe because of empathy, maybe because he has family members, right? And how many of us don't in terms of our futures? And that's one of the powers of this narrative. But one of the challenges, and I think the easiest thing about our kind of state of affairs in this context is the power of our polity and our economic ethos is the force of assimilation. And that's a beautiful thing. But one of its dangers and its challenges is the ease with which assimilation can create others. And heretofore, that's where the anti-immigrant lobby, that is not exclusive But unfortunately, as Marco Rubio said, much to his credit, certainly perhaps some self-serving interests involved, but he warned his party about stopping the hate in terms of this. See if something substantive comes of that, right? Other than a kind of an enforcement-only approach. So there, by far, one party, I believe, on this issue is worse, but both have problems, and particularly the one that the state where I was born, and the party that I associate myself with in the context of Chuck Schumer.
Yes.
My name is Martin Musaka. I'm a geography major. And in light of everything that we know, race being a social construct, as well as myself growing up being colonized as well, I was just wondering what actually makes, or what would actually make an American an American? What is it anchored to the Constitution? What would actually make you have
I think that's part of the ongoing debate, right? And that's what the president spoke to in his State of the Union address in terms of dreamers being considered American in every sense of the word, and in so many respects, so many of them not knowing they were dreamers until college, until seeking driver's license or a certain age. I've had it happen here with various events I've been involved with on campus, petition drives, and I've had students come up to me and say, I may be undocumented. What can I do? And when those issues came up, there was a different political climate. So that's an ongoing debate. It's part of the ethos we have, but part of our obligation in light of that, and particularly from young people, right? Because I was of an ilk that believed that young people only cared about Justin Bieber, Nelly, or others. Sure, there'd be a lot more, right? If one of them, Kevin Hart, I just saw a show. That's pretty funny. There would be a lot of them filling the stadium if any of them showed up. But this group, if 4 individuals that risked everything, helped change, no way in my lifetime, I would have bet everything not see that on Time magazine. And it was young people that did it. And they're helping define that. So good question, not an easy answer.
How do you rate the level of activism on this campus? How would you change?
I wouldn't say the level of activism, I would say the level of engagement. Because I don't attribute it to point fingers at people that are under the age of 20. Right? I would say, what level of engagement does this university commit? Being at the epicenter. I think certainly the College of Law has done its share. And I applaud my colleague Juan Gomez and my other colleagues who've been involved in that effort. To what engagement can we do more? To what extent can we take the lead and say those that are recipients of deferred action deserve in-state tuition? Issues that I've written about, and I don't publicize it, but I had the good fortune and honor to be the expert witness in the recent case against the state of Florida to try to deny in-state tuition to U.S. citizens just because their parents were undocumented. And when the Southern Poverty Law Center came to the law school and asked for assistance, I was so proud of that, and I knew we were going to win. And I wrote op-eds, and I sent them to legislative leaders. They didn't care. They continue to pass their regulations, denied to review it in the judicial committees. To what extent will we do that now? Or will we just wait, as Dr. King said, for the eventuality of the future? Or are we going to take steps? That would be my retort. I'd love to annoy. I love to annoy in general, but I would say that be it with President Rosenberg or others. Where is our obligation? Where is the commitment of the hundreds, if not 1,000 professors that are on this campus that teach ethnic studies, that teach anthropology, that have the opportunity to speak out and address these issues? Why aren't we Berkeley in 1960? There's no reason we can't. And you know what? I think the students will push us there. So they're less than passive in terms of my colleagues and my institution, but that will change.
Given the group that's here, I'm sorry, my name is Isabel Delia. Given the group that's here and what you just mentioned, what tips, suggestions would you give this audience in terms of either self-education or tips on how to become change agents with this?
Well, I think the best people to talk about it, some of the SWARE leaders, United We Dream, right? Trail of Dreams, to get to know them. I see a bunch of pre-20-year-olds here to think about law school, to think about other programs, but to do well and then be pests, right? In terms of student organizations, to be involved and not believe anything I said. Not believe a word I said and look it up yourself. And get motivated, get annoyed. I feel in some respects as a scholar I have it easy because I write about things that annoy me, right? In terms of speaking out for Latinos and Latinas and speaking out for other underrepresented groups, I have such advantages with that. Engage it yourself, you know? Think about your frats or your sororities or your whatever dance club or other things that goes on here in GC. And I think it's wonderful, but also think about getting them involved and learning from others. Carlos, any thoughts? Karen, any thoughts about that? Jose?
Yeah, my name is Jose Diaz. What I would say is don't stick too much on your beliefs on like the right or the left. Try to reach out and understand the other side's argument. You know, they may be incorrect and so forth, but if everybody sticks in their respective sides, we're not going to meet anybody halfway to understand. And maybe some of the things that the other side believes are myths, but if they don't reach out and go to the other side and understand, nobody's going to know how we can come together and solve this. And like going way back to our founding fathers, this is a democracy in America. It's an experiment that we all contribute together, not the left side is right or the right side is right. It's when we all come together as Americans is when we actually make progress to make this country better. And that's what, like that cover of We Are Americans, that fine American, that's what Jose Antonio Vargas is. And I think what defines us is what we contribute to the society, is this experiment to make freedom and opportunity available to everybody and not exclude any segment of the population just because you don't understand them, they look different.
In concrete terms, joining the FIU chapter of SWARE. Karen, help me with the organization's name.
The Public Health Community Project for Immigrants.
Oh, that sounds shorter than I recall, but that's good. Right. I would get involved in some of those groups or in other groups. That would be funny.
Question from me, President Obama. President Obama said that his immigration reform that he's working on is not amnesty. Could you elaborate a little more on that? Why is he not wanting to equate what he's doing as any form of amnesty?
Well, that's
as
been
we know?
there was a time in this country where being called a liberal, right, was equated with communism, and unfortunately, in the immigration debate, amnesty is viewed to support lawlessness, and so there's a recognition that the narrative is powerful, and I don't really care. Call it pink, yellow, orange, whatever you call it, but if you provide some sort of means to incorporate the 11 million, you know, and these are tough questions. I mean, in the book I worked on for a couple of years on this project, I struggle with it, and I come up with solutions, including guest worker, that programs that are going to be less palatable for, that may sound like a George W. actually, less palatable than some of my progressive friends would be, because we have, by my account, at least 3 significant groups. The 11 or so million that are here, how do we treat them? I think there should be a path with certain checks and dues that are paid with respect to that. We have dreamers, and I always want to include them as a separate group because I want the face to change. I know some say that it's a way to marginalize. I think it's the opposite, the way to change the narrative. That's going to be, I think, the spearhead to bring forth change. I think that's almost a no-brainer. But we have to think about that immigration won't end. Right? Undocumented immigration won't end. And I think we have to be realistic about this. We can't just continue to have open doors. Although some of my colleagues would differ on that, I think a guest worker program, a verifiable guest worker program, will work out. Because what I'm saying is conservative economic theory. It is not progressive liberal rights theory. The most conservatives out there recognize that undocumented immigration is a function of industries such as agriculture, construction, and service. Those are the things that need to be talked about, and not just labels. long-winded answer, sorry.
I wonder if you could speak to, when I was growing up, America was seen as the melting pot, and then it changed. It was the salad bowl. You come here and you maintain your identity, but we're still all together. And now it just seems like it's just a big door with a do not enter sign. Could you speak to the shift? Why that? Because it seems very stark to me. And
I actually am more optimistic than that. That's actually a question I asked my law student when I was perhaps your age. My law professor when I was your age. And I said, he said, from one perspective, you're right. But think about how many countries don't even come close. Japan, Sweden, these icons of peace and democracy. Israel, not of peace. Forgive me. But these iconic democracies, you can't even become a member. You can't even get in. And we have an incredible experiment. So we're going to have our lumps. So while I'm a critic, I'm proud as hell of this country. Because I know from where I came from, nowhere in the world would that happen. So I think there are those hiccups and there are those challenges, but there's incredible opportunities. And, what I'm saying is not about passing a cup, right? Or passing a plate. When I wish all of you, in terms of some things we can do, come on, when's our next stream clinic?
February 9th.
February 9th. I would love for some of you to attend. All of you to attend. It will change your perspective. And one gentleman I asked to be here, but unfortunately on his one day off, he was working 12 hours, a high school student by the name of Aldo. I'll change his last name. But when I saw Aldo, there's a classic example of my education or my enlightenment. When I saw Aldo on the first day I was at the clinic, and I must have helped at least 20 to 30 people by then, and I see Aldo, and Aldo has more piercings. Oh my goodness, on the mouth, on the lips, on the... there must have been... I must envision more than he actually has, right? But it seemed like it was tribal. I was like, oh, this is going to be my trouble child. All right? Aldo's a straight A student, National Honor Society, 4.0, perfect attendance, wants to go to medical school. Right? Aldo, if he was here and we happen to have the dean of the medical school, I'd love for him to be here, and other leaders, is exactly who we should be meeting. And I would say the vast majority of I would venture to say at least 100 to 200 families I happen to help in this part of the effort that many of in different stages we have. I wish my kids were like that. I have 5 of my own, and I think they're going to do incredible stuff. They better. But these kids, I've seen valedictorians, I've seen National Honor Society, straight A students, one young lady graduate from Dartmouth, another one on a 95 miles per hour fastball that had a full scholarship to Nebraska. I reminded him I also do entertainment law. I mean, these are like the who's who, and in some respects it makes sense. As the most vulnerable have to protect themselves the most. But another thing we take for granted that I shorten in terms of time constraint, the life that someone, like, Carlos doesn't know it, he doesn't believe it. Too protective of my daughter, so you can't meet her. But at times when Carlos and I have done interviews or what have you, I would pick him up, and he would tell me how he had a job in Broward, in Weston, from where he lived. And he would tell me to have that job, he used to take him 4 hours a day each way on public transportation. Talk about commitment. That is the narrative. So I'm more optimistic because we're changing that conversation, and we're having this that we didn't have before. And the classroom I see, the classrooms I see, the FIU College of Law is among the most diverse in this country, although a bit lacking in terms of African American and Caribbean blacks, and hopefully we'll affect that and change that. So, those incremental changes, I have to believe in them. I have to believe in them, no matter how critical I am in terms of that. So I think, these things will happen. I just hope, we can continue to speak up and it just doesn't become enforcement only. But when I one day see Senator Pacheco and the new designer of the Capitol, Mr. Rowe, and others, I'm confident in our future.
My name is Sofia Santiesteban, and I work with pre-college students. And actually, I have sent several of my students who were not, they didn't have the legal status, but it was so hard to find because in some other people came to us where the clinics were taking place. So this is a practical recommendation that it should circulate or go to the beacon or go to because here in this building they didn't know that it was going on at the
The Beacon just yesterday was prepared to run 2 stories. They've run about at least 5 since the clinics have started. Juan, we've been to Broward, Homestead, Miami-Dade College. We're prepared to be in Little Havana. We've tried, and we've done it more, and I don't think we shouldn't do more. I think the more the merrier, and we want to. Yeah, I think the more the merrier. We look forward to continue to try it. I would say Juan and I and others will do it to where we have gray hairs, but too late in terms of that. Others will take the mantle. Some of the leaders of the Black Law Student Organization, the Hispanic Law Student Association, the Federalists, and others will hopefully take the lead, but hopefully won't have to. There'll be comprehensive reform.
Martin, once again.
But we haven't done enough, mind you. You know, I'm going to give you an example. By the way, I'm going to give you an example. University of Texas has a national ad on LexisNexis, one of the largest search engines for law and news. I'll get to you, sir. Forgive me, but I'll just give you a prime example. UT Law School supports Dreamers. Boom! I open up. Some of you may have seen it in your searches. You're better to be doing searches in your class. UT Law School. And they're announcing their first clinic that's going to occur a month from now. And I sent it out immediately to Juan, to media relations. And in terms of by that time we've had at least 13. And, you know, I spoke to Diane Fernandez and others to try to get the word out. We could use some help too in terms of these resources. And again, the dean's been unwavering, never questioning as far as I know. Maybe he's one that has had to deal with more in terms of unwavering that support. Would love to get some of that. Got some of that love, not necessarily for us, but for the students. It's remarkable. I wish you could be there just for a couple, and I've actually planned on bringing my kids in a little bit of a challenge in terms of how ruckus it is. I want them to see that narrative, so I wish we would do more, because doggone it, there's no school in the country, no institution, including the federal government, that's doing what we're doing, and we don't have to see at least my ugly mug on it, but I'd love to see a group of our students. And how many students here? There were a few. Sir, you've been at the clinics. You two have been at the clinics as well. And over here, 2 more. On and on, all day, and quietly. And you know, it's awesome to see. I mean, it's fantastic to see. You know, they give me a dirty look because of the grade I gave them. But then you see them half an hour later pushing, right, to get more information, to help to find out, to prove that person's been here for 5 years. Truly amazing stuff, and it's renewed my faith in young people. I didn't always have it.